I came home from a 14-hour shift, and my work truck was gone. Not parked elsewhere, not stolen in some cinematic highway smash. Towed out of my own driveway at 2 a.m., hooked up like a piece of trash. The diesel smell still hung in the yard like proof. I watched the security footage the next morning. Vivian Whitmore, standing in her yard, arms folded, directing the tow driver with the smug air of someone convinced she's above the rules. She even gave my camera a little wave, like a queen acknowledging a peasant. 60 grand of tools and equipment vanished overnight. My livelihood gone. I stood on my gravel drive, the one I'd parked on legally for 15 years, tasting rage that was metallic and cold. I'm Garrett. 3 years ago, my wife, Elena, died. She left me this small ranch on a corner lot in Pinehurst Meadows, 127 houses, built between 1998 and 2003, the kind of neighborhood assembled by people who actually cared about their work. I'm a general contractor. I preserve old buildings downtown. 60-hour weeks are normal. My F-350 is a working truck, crusted with sawdust and company logos. It isn't pretty, but it's paid for, and sometimes my trailer sits in the driveway. To some people, that's an affront to their carefully curated curb appeal. To me, it's proof of honest work. Pinehurst used to be neighbors. Kids on bikes, sugar borrow between porches, and nobody policing your lawn to a fraction of an inch. Then 2019 happened. Property values skyrocketed, and suddenly the place filled up with Californians carrying suitcases full of taste and no tolerance. An HOA formed under the familiar chant of protecting property values. Translation: make sure people who don't match the new image know their place. Enter Vivian Whitmore. She drove in from California in 2020, elected herself HOA president, and launched her campaign on property protection rhetoric. Lives in an $850,000 house 3 doors down and parks a white Tesla with vanity plates that scream, "Look at me." She even measures neighbors' grass with a ruler. I've seen it. One Saturday morning at the mailbox, she sidled up to me, heels clicking, perfume like vanilla frosting thick in the air, and said, syrupy sweet, "Hi Garrett, I'm Vivian." "About your truck," she suggested, without subtlety, that my truck degraded the neighborhood, and maybe I should find more appropriate places to park. I told her calmly, "I'm not under the HOA's covenants. My lot predates them by 6 months." Her smile froze. That instant told me everything. She had no intention to be neighborly. A week later, code enforcement knocked on my door because of an anonymous complaint about unlicensed commercial vehicle storage. The inspector checked and told me I was within the law. But he tapped his pen and said something telling. Whoever called used specific legal language. Someone was playing chess, not just whining. That someone had real estate knowledge and a plan. Vivian didn't stop at passive-aggressive notes. She escalated to a full campaign. Door to door with a binder of photos of my truck. Morning, noon, night, like she was building a criminal file. She measured the distance from my bumper to the sidewalk with a tape, then went to the HOA and to a few newer neighbors and got 23 signatures on a petition demanding the city ban commercial vehicles. She framed it as protecting values. The irony stung. They'd moved here for prestige, but they were terrified of honest work. At the city council hearing, she presented her sleazy slideshow, pie charts and bar graphs that were designed to terrify people into supporting her crusade. When my turn came, I laid Elena's death certificate, the inheritance paperwork, my business license, and 3 longtime neighbors' testimony on the council table. Harold, a 73-year-old retired electrician who'd wired half the neighborhood, stood and said I'd helped him for free after a storm. Mrs. Chun described me installing grab bars for her mother. The council voted her petition down, 5-0. Total annihilation. She didn't accept humiliation gracefully. Instead, she smiled at me after the hearing and said, "If you ever decide this neighborhood isn't a good fit, I can help you find something more appropriate." Translation: where paupers belong. I drove home, the diesel mixing with her vanilla, and told myself I was staying. Elena's handwriting always told me not to be pushed around. She'd been careful when her father sold the land. She'd left me protections. The harassment moved into low-grade warfare. Every morning when I left for work, Vivian called in noise complaints because my diesel was warming up. Officer Martinez told me my truck was within legal limits, but he had to respond to every complaint. She filed a BBB complaint with anonymous customers alleging I was a bad neighbor. The BBB found nothing. She started posting obsessively in the HOA Facebook group, angles of my truck, my schedule, the time I took out the trash. The new arrivals cheered her on. I installed 6 HD cameras with night vision. Their hum made Vivian paranoid. The cameras also recorded everything she did. Then came the night towing. I woke to the sound of chains and hydraulics. My truck hooked and lifted from my driveway, judged by a tow operator who claimed illegal street parking. In my driveway, Vivian stood in a bathrobe across the street, arms crossed, watching the truck she'd engineered disappear. She'd measured the bumper-to-sidewalk distance earlier that night and called the exact ordinance section to the tow company. Towing fees, storage, lost contracts, hundreds of dollars I couldn't easily replace. Security footage captured her measuring tape, the deliberate execution of a plan. I felt small and enormous at once, furious and determined. She doubled down with legal intimidation, a cease and desist demanding I remove my cameras because they allegedly violated privacy and caused her emotional distress. The letter included a bogus demand for legal fees. I called Jake, my lawyer friend who smells like leather-bound books and knows his way around property law. He laughed at the letter. Cameras pointed at your own property are legal. The letter misquoted cases and made sloppy errors. It was intimidation dressed in expensive stationery. Vivian called an emergency HOA meeting and presented Protecting Our Investment, the Hayes Problem, complete with PowerPoint. She proposed a special assessment to fund legal defense and enhance security. To her surprise, Harold stood and called bullshit. He and several long-term residents testified on my behalf. But while she played victim in the community center, vandalism happened at my garage. Someone spray-painted "move" in foot-high red letters. My cameras caught the figure, dark clothes and unmistakable designer heels. Deputy Williams took the report, but couldn't make charges without a clear face shot. Vivian answered the door in full makeup when he visited, playing innocent perfectly. That spray paint, however, pushed me to dig into property records. Harold had always hinted Elena's father was a clever man. He told me to check the old surveys. I called Pinnacle Title and, for $340, got a full property report that smelled like old paper and secrets. Linda Morrison at Pinnacle leaned over a 1997 survey and said the words I'd been waiting to hear. Your property includes Pinehurst Drive. The developer had gone bankrupt in 2001, and the paperwork transferring the road to the city had never been completed. The 60-foot strip that everyone used as the street was technically on my deed. In short, I owned a road. It hit me like a sledge. Vivian's house, and everyone else's access, sat squarely on land I legally owned. Elena's father had tucked protections into the sale. Inside Elena's jewelry box, I found a handwritten note from him. If anyone tries to bully you off the land, check the 1997 markers. She'd left me a nuclear option, hidden in plain sight. Even dead, she'd set me up not to be pushed. I called Jake. He grinned like a hunter smelling blood. We'd file a quiet title action to confirm my ownership and clean the cloud off the deed. We'd petition the city to reclassify Pinehurst Drive as a private road with a public easement, which would give me significant control, gate the road, charge fees, or block development that required city access. Marcus, my surveyor buddy, would plant permanent markers and certify the boundaries. Linda said the city had maintained the road for 20 years without authority, so I could claim reimbursement for maintenance, roughly $8,000 annually. The math was intoxicating. 20 years of upkeep, the right to control access, and a documented campaign of harassment all on paper now. We prepared quietly. Jake assembled a harassment dossier, security footage, police reports, ballooning towing bills, spray paint, false complaints. We did not tell Vivian. When the city mailed the reclassification notices in 30 days, she'd find out her $1 million house depended on my goodwill. She didn't wait. She panicked and escalated. First, a nail strip across my driveway that shredded 2 Michelin tires. My cameras caught a figure placing the strip at 3:37 a.m., then returning 20 minutes later. And in that return, she looked up, and for 3 seconds her face was clear. Deputy Williams watched the footage and shifted. That 3 seconds would matter. Vivian tried one last gambit. She approached me while I changed tires, wearing a smile like it was a peace offering and carrying a manila folder. "Garrett," she said in the fake friendly voice that had been her tactic all along. She offered me a bribe disguised as neighborly concern. "Sell," she implied, quietly. "We'll make it painless." She underestimated how stubborn grief and principle can make a man. Elena had left me more than a house. She'd left a lesson about knowing what you own and using it. We filed a quiet title. We petitioned for reclassification. We let the process move through the city's channels like a legal snare. When letters went out, Vivian learned what I already knew. Her house sat on my land. The community that had cheered her petty crusades now had to reckon with their access, depending on the man she tormented. Harold smiled the day the notice arrived like a man who'd seen the perfect ripple effect of justice. The plan wasn't about revenge for revenge's sake. It was about drawing a line and forcing a bully to respect boundaries. It was about making sure no one could weaponize the bureaucracy against someone living honestly and working hard. Elena's father had been right. Never assume easements are permanent. Always check the deed. When the city finally recognized the quiet title I'd filed, the balance shifted. Suddenly Vivian's threats were hollow. Suddenly the woman who had orchestrated my unraveling had to answer for the damage she'd done. If your HOA ever tries to take your property, don't panic. Document everything. Get good counsel. Check the records. Sometimes the thing you need isn't a courtroom brawl. It's understanding exactly what you own and using that knowledge with a cool head. For me, Elena's handwriting and an old survey map turned months of harassment into a manageable legal fight. For Vivian, the predator, the road's ownership turned the game. For me, it meant I could keep my truck, my business, and my home, and maybe finally breathe that vanilla-scented air without wanting to choke. "I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot," she said, sliding a folder across my workbench. Inside was a crisp real estate contract with my address already filled in. The number type on the purchase line made me blink. Fair market value plus 15%. Nearly 200 grand more than my house was worth. "I represent a client very interested in corner lots," she went on smoothly. "This solves everything. You relocate to a place more aligned with your lifestyle, and the neighborhood restores its original character." The nerve of it almost made me laugh. After months of slashed tires, threatening letters, and bogus code complaints, she thought a fat check could erase me. "That's generous," I said, wiping grease from my knuckles with a rag. "But I'm staying right here, exactly where I belong." Her smile faltered, a predator's mask slipping for half a second. It would be unfortunate if life became more complicated for someone who insists on staying where they aren't wanted. That threat, delivered while I replaced the tires she herself had punctured, told me everything I ever needed to know about Vivian Whitmore. That evening, Harold shuffled onto my porch with a six-pack and his usual frown. The old electrician had been digging. "She's been working the same trick on 3 other families," he said, setting his beer down. "Mrs. Patterson, the Martinezes, that young couple renting the blue house. Same story every time, months of harassment, then an inflated offer. All of them people Vivian clearly decided didn't fit. A widowed retiree, a Hispanic family whose kids filled the street with laughter, renters driving older cars. She wasn't protecting property values. She was trying to flip the neighborhood's very identity. It hit me like a blueprint snapping into focus. This wasn't random. It was deliberate. That night, I sat in my idling truck, watching Vivian pace through her living room windows. Every light blazed. She looked like a caged animal. My phone buzzed. Jake, my lawyer friend. Quiet title action filed. City notices go out Monday. She won't see it coming. The rumble of diesel mixed with the night air. Justice was building pressure, like steam trapped in a boiler. When the certified letters landed Monday morning, I watched through my kitchen window as neighbors signed for them one by one. By 3, Vivian's Tesla glided back into her driveway. She slit her envelope open. Her scream carried across 3 houses. Hi. Sharp, the sound of a world collapsing. By 4, Harold spotted a man snapping pictures of my property under the pretense of scrolling his phone. A private investigator digging into my life. Harold smirked. Professional enough. But asking questions about your wife, your books, your jobs. She's trying to paint you as unstable. The next day, every mailbox bloomed with glossy flyers. Headline in bold red, Neighborhood Safety Alert. Unstable resident threatens community values. My work truck schedule printed like a wanted poster. Photos doctored to make my yard look like a junk heap. Even insinuations about my wife's death. But Vivian overplayed her hand. My upgraded cameras caught her at dawn, leggings and all, stuffing the flyers herself. Crystal clear footage. Game over. By Wednesday, she escalated to the nuclear option. 3 complaints filed with the state contractors board, accusing me of intimidation, botched work, and property damage. 15 spotless years suddenly under siege. Hearing set for Friday. Jake came with me, briefcase full of records, testimonials, and photos. The stale hearing room buzzed with fluorescent hum as her attorney painted me as a menace. A concerning pattern of disputes, he said, flipping through papers. Jake dismantled them one by one. Photos of my work, letters from clients. And when the board tried calling those anonymous complainants, every number was dead. These are fabricated, the chairman concluded flatly. Case dismissed. License intact. But Jake wasn't done. That night he called, voice edged with fire. She's had option contracts on 5 homes in neighborhood. Every one tied to people she's harassed. This is her business model, bully by flip. Now I knew exactly what I was up against. Thursday evening, her house glared like a lantern. Every light blazing while she no doubt begged lawyers for miracles. My road ownership threatened to sink her entire empire. The council hearing came fast. By 6:30, the Civic Center overflowed. Folding chairs crammed, news cameras glowing. The smell of burnt coffee and anticipation filled the air. Vivian swept in late, power suit and expensive lawyer in tow. She wore her confidence like armor, convinced money would bend reality. I walked in with a rolled-up 1997 survey map, the kind of weapon she'd never planned for. Her lawyer argued hard. 20 years of city maintenance establishes public access, he boomed. He waved a petition signed by 60-plus neighbors. Then City Attorney Sarah Walsh stood up. Her words cut clean. The title chain is unbroken. The developer's bankruptcy left Pinehurst Drive private. Mr. Hayes is, and has been, the legal owner for over 2 decades. The city owes him reimbursement. The crowd erupted in whispers. Vivian went pale. When my turn came, I kept it simple. I told them about the harassment, the vandalism, the lies. Then Jake projected footage on the chamber screen. Vivian with a tape measure by my truck. Vivian ordering the tow. Vivian spraying my garage. Vivian stuffing flyers. This was never about values, I said. It was about one person deciding who does and doesn't belong. But here's what she didn't realize. Her $1 million home sits on a road I own. Vivian snapped. Water glass toppled. This is extortion, she shrieked. He's unstable. He doesn't belong here. The cameras ate it up. Her mask was gone, and the whole county saw it. The council voted. 5-0. Reclassification approved. Pinehurst Drive was mine. She collapsed, sobbing. Outside, a deputy waited with harassment lawsuit papers Jake had queued up. Her meltdown ran on TV for 3 nights straight. 3 weeks later, her attorney caved. Settlement terms, $15,000 in damages, full legal fees reimbursed, written apology, no contact forever, and disclosure of my road ownership in any future sale, torpedoing her house's value. Her Tesla vanished the same week, a for sale sign following soon after. It sat for 8 months before she sold 20% under asking. But that wasn't the end. The city reimbursed me $18,000 for 2 decades of road maintenance. With Vivian's settlement, I started the Elena Memorial Scholarship Fund, named for my late wife. Every spring, kids bound for trade schools gather in my backyard, roses blooming, tools buzzing in the distance. We hand out grants for welding, plumbing, electrical, real work that builds the world. Harold started Know Your Rights workshops at the community center. Standing room only crowds. People discovered easements, mineral rights, water rights they never knew they had. The Martinezes learned their backyard included water access. Mrs. Patterson discovered mineral rights under 3 lots. A widow in Houston fought off an oil company. A young contractor in Dallas saved his truck from an HOA. The ripple grew. Our block threw its first annual party on the road itself. Harold at the grill. Mrs. Chin's dumplings steaming. Kids selling lemonade. Guitars strumming. The street I owned, the street Elena and I once dreamed about, had become a symbol of neighbors standing together. Now, when I sit on my porch with her wedding ring warm against my chest, I hear laughter instead of hostility. The sound of kids playing on a road that belongs to me, but more importantly, belongs to all of us. Have you ever faced down an HOA nightmare that made you question humanity? Share your story in the comments. Misery loves company, but victory loves blueprints. And if you enjoyed watching an entitled bully implode, subscribe for more. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't living well. It's legally owning the road they have to drive on. Welcome back to MZ HOA Stories, where Karens meet consequences.